Hello, this is Dr. C, and welcome to another episode of Rethinking Christian Education. Now, remember, the purpose of these conversations is to create a safe space where the members of the Christian education community can learn and grow together. And so today's topic is readiness. And our guiding question for today is your church ready to rethink Christian education? I just want to remind us of our CE Talk norms, like, share with everyone you know, tag your friends, tag your director of Christian education, invite them to look at it at a later time, make comments in the chat box, ask questions, take notes. And so last week, we talked about Christian education being discipleship. And we talked about how discipleship is the task that was given to the church or the body of Christ. And we also talked about how the church has to own and commit to discipleship. And so understand that rethinking Christian education, it is a huge, a well thought out, a much needed, sometimes exhausting paradigm shift. It's a change without any filters. Change for many of us is difficult. Rethinking Christian education could be considered difficult. However, because it is our assignment, the church's assignment, whether it's difficult or not, it's an assignment that we must accept. Also understand that rethinking Christian education is intentionally designed to drive us to seriously examine ourselves, examine our congregation, examine the work that we do in the area of Christian education or discipleship, to determine if we are meeting needs. If we're not, then what do we need to do to meet the needs of ministry? And so tonight, I want to share with you, as our topic is readiness, I want to share with you 10 signs of not being ready to rethink Christian education. And take notes. If I say something and you miss it, it'll always be here. You can go back and play it again. And I want you to write notes, ask questions, put them in the chat box, and we'll respond to them. But the 10 signs that a church or congregation is not ready to rethink Christian education, they are: number one, the church is not discipleship driven, or it's not driven by discipleship. Think about this. There are three types of church. We talked about it before. There is the program church. That church is focused on structure and organization, heavy on structure and heavy on organization, but light on actual disciple making or discipleship. Then there's the home church, where the priority is making disciples, get them saved at any cost. It's heavy on discipleship, but light on organization and structure. And then there is the future church. And the future church focuses on systems systems rather of organized discipleship. Now, there are three reasons why any system doesn't work. I'll say four. There are four reasons why a system doesn't work. And I call them OPP plus one. O, the organization, the way it's organized is not conducive to success. P, you have people, the right people, doing the wrong things. P, processes. Sometimes we have far too many processes in our systems. And so organization will cause our systems to not function properly. People will cause our number two is people will cause our organizations or our systems not to function, and processes, the wrong processes for our systems will cause it not to function. Oh, and the plus one when you ignore one, two, and three. Rethinking Christian education is going to address those system issues by focusing on programming, and we'll focus on teaching, and we'll focus on discipleship. And so that first sign that a congregation or a church is not ready just yet for rethinking Christian education is that the church is not driven by discipleship. Number two, there is a two-headed leadership. And so in many places, there is the official leader, and then there's the unofficial leader. And any organization with two leaders, two heads, is a monster. And the church is not an exception. A church who is not focused and being led by one leadership, the vision of one leadership, if that's you, you're not ready to rethink Christian education. There are some more pressing issues. Number three, the congregation is focused on going back to church. What do I mean by going back to church? Going back to doing things the way we've always done them. Going back to saying what we've always said. And we've heard the definition of insanity. Well, in this day and age, while we're in this triple pandemic, to keep doing things the same way and expect to get the result or the end that we desire is insanity. And so the congregation that focuses on going back to church, to the old way of doing things, is not ready to rethink Christian education. Number four, the focus is on deficits versus assets, on disabilities versus abilities. Think about how many times you've heard someone say, our church does not have this. We don't have youth in our church. We don't have singles in our church. We don't have. What about what you do have? And then we are constantly reminding ourselves of what we cannot do. Yeah, we're the church who profess that I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, but yet we are constantly saying what we cannot do, what our disabilities are. So if you're a church, your church focuses more on its deficits versus instead of its assets, if it focuses on its disabilities versus rather than its abilities, then this is not the time to rethink Christian education. Again, there are some more pressing issues on hand for you. Number five, members are not willing to plan. I'll say that again. Members are not willing to plan. I read a book some time ago called The McDonaldization of the world. Of the world. And the whole idea was talking about how we have become a society where we want everything right away. We want to speak it and make it happen instantly. Understand that rethinking Christian education, changing the paradigm of how we disciple individuals is a change process, and change does not happen overnight. Change happens over time. In that change, we discover some things that may have been in our blind spots. In that change, we discover some things that we may have not been doing as well as we thought we were doing. Change is a timed process in which many members don't have the wherewithal nor the desire to engage in. And so, if by chance your congregation, the members overall, are not willing to take the time to invest the time in planning Christian education, then this might not be the time to rethink Christian education. Number 6, respect for what others have to offer is not the norm. I'll say that one again. Respect for what others have to offer is not the norm. What does that look like? You see the same people doing everything all of the time. Capable, qualified individuals in the congregation, but are never brought to the table to give input. Oftentimes, especially in the traditional church, people tend to own the table. They own the room. They own the chairs, and they own the door to the room. If your church is not has not positioned itself to hear and take in what all members have to offer to the ministry, then this might not be the time for you to rethink Christian education. Number 7, there is no sense of community within the church. Yes, there are congregations where there's not a sense of community. Not saying that you have to break sit together for every meal or every baby birth and all the family gatherings, but there should be a sense of oneness within the congregation. We all don't have to get along all of the time, but there should be a sense of oneness, one body, one vision, one mission within that house. And if your congregation or if your church membership does not have that sense of community, then this is not the time for you to engage in rethinking Christian education. Number 8, new members, young adults are not being trained for future leadership roles. Ooh, new members, young adults are not being trained for future leadership roles. We tend to have a habit of developing a program and plugging names in to the secondary agenda. But too many times we have seen where the same leaders or the leadership starts to look the same. They're all the same age. They're all from the same era. They've been in the church forever. And regardless of what a young adult brings to the congregation, after we have sent them off to college and they've come back, regardless of what they bring, regardless of what a new member might be able to offer, what skills that new member might possess, what giftings and abilities new members might have, sometimes we tend to overlook them. And if we are having challenges with training individuals to take on leadership roles, train them not to just be members, but to take on leadership roles, if we are not in that place, then that might be a sign. In fact, that is a sign that your church or congregation is not ready to rethink Christian education. Number 9, the church is not multi or intergenerational. If you look at the congregation and the average age is 55 or above for 5 years, you're not intergenerational. And intergenerational does not mean grandmother and grandchildren. Intergenerational means grandparents, their children, then their children. And they're all playing an active role in the congregation, that there is a seat at that table for all generations, that they engage with each other in that congregation. And if by chance your congregation is not intergenerational, might be a sign that this is not the time for you to engage in rethinking Christian education. And number 10, servant leadership is not the norm. Servant leadership is not the norm. There are several types of leadership, and we can talk about that in a train. I'll come to you and talk about it even more. But servant leadership, the hierarchy is not top down, but it's bottom up. And if bottom up is not the thinking at your church, in your congregation, if you don't have, when I say you, if the congregation does not have take the posture of being a servant leader from the bottom up, it might be a sign that your church is not ready for rethinking Christian education. Remember that Christian education is intentionally designed to cause us to examine ourselves and examine our congregations to make those changes that we need to see in churches today. And so there are signs. And again, the church is not driven by discipleship. There's a two-headed leadership. Number 3, the congregation is focused on going back to church. Number 4, the focus is on deficits instead of assets. Number 5, members are not willing to plan. Number 6, respect for what others have to offer is not the norm. Number 7, there is no sense of community within the church. And number 8, new members and young adults are not being trained for future leadership roles. Number 9, the church is not intergenerational. And number 10, servant leadership is not the norm. Brothers and sisters, rethinking Christian education is a paradigm shift. Our aim is to be a focus, our aim rather, is for Christian education to drive the focus to be an organized discipleship machine. The task of discipleship is given to the church. It is the assignment that we, the church, by way of Christian education, we have to own it and we have to commit to it. We have to be ready to make some changes. And so here's our homework for next week. We've talked about the 10 signs of not being ready to rethink Christian education. Your homework for next week is to assess your church to see if it is ready to rethink Christian education. Use those same 10 signs. Just ask the question. You ask these 10 questions, or use these 10 signs, have someone else use the same 10 signs, and determine, is my church ready? If my church is not ready, what do we need to do to get ready? Are there some things that we can do on our own? Are there some things that we might need to bring some help in to do? Are there some things that we don't understand? Are there some things that are in our blind side? If we are not ready to rethink Christian education, we've got to take care of those pertinent issues because they could choke the life of the church. And so join us next week when we talk about getting started. Remember, like, share, and invite. Make comments in the chat box. Take notes. Ask questions. If you're interested in ways that I can share this conversation or other CE Talk conversations with your congregation, go to drseymour.com. My contact information is there, how to reach me, and you can even leave questions and comments there. drseymour.com. Tell a pastor, tell a church member, tell your director, tell a teacher to join the Christian education community every Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, where we're learning and growing together, learning how to rethink Christian education. I'm Dr. Seymour. Thank you for joining us and have an awesome evening. Bye-bye.